Florida's capital, a place where politicians pass laws affecting millions of lives. But behind the scenes, something outrageous is happening. A quiet war is being waged, not over elections or infrastructure, but against justice. And who's waging this war? The banking industry, one of the most powerful lobbies in all of Florida politics. The industry is currently lobbying our elected officials to gut funding for a long-running legal program that helps people get a fair shot in state courts, so that rich people and big businesses can't just run roughshod over everyone else. It's called legal aid. And today, we're diving into a high-stakes conflict in Florida over legal aid funding, how it started, why it matters, and what it means to the future of justice. But first, let's talk about what legal aid is and why it's so important. Legal aid programs are a critical part of justice. They help keep courts fair and open to all by providing attorneys to folks who can't afford one themselves, like a family of four making less than $62,000 a year. Imagine a battered spouse trying to escape an abusive partner while fighting for custody of her kids, or a disabled veteran struggling to secure their benefits, or a family on the brink of foreclosure or eviction and facing homelessness. These are people facing cases of life-changing consequences. And in a state like Florida, where 1 in 8 people live in poverty, the need for legal aid is enormous. And yet, Florida doesn't even fund its legal aid programs. That's right. Florida is just one of 4 states in the country that provides no direct funding for legal aid. Instead, the Florida Supreme Court has created something called the IOTA program. Let me break that down. IOTA stands for Interest on Trust Accounts. It's a system where law firms place small or short-term client funds, like escrow money, into special bank accounts. The interest earned on those accounts doesn't go to the banks or the clients. It goes instead to fund legal aid programs. Now, the Florida Supreme Court used to require law firms to seek out the highest available interest rates when choosing which banks to use for their IOTA business. But the rules were vague and weak, and many firms just ended up parking their accounts at banks paying paltry interest rates. Some banks paid as little as 0.1% interest on these accounts. But everything changed in 2023. The court set new rules that essentially required banks to pay higher interest rates if they wanted to keep holding IOTA accounts. And the impact? Massive. Funding shot up from $10 million to $280 million. Legal aid offices across Florida expanded, hired more staff, and helped more families. Finally, the system was working, but not everyone was happy about it. In fact, banks were furious. One even blamed the new rules for cutting into its profits, even though it still made over $100 million that year. But let's put this into perspective. Banks collectively hold over $9 billion in IOTA deposits, and nobody is forcing banks to participate in this program. No bank has to serve IOTA accounts if it doesn't think the business is profitable. And yet, even with these new rules, the number of banks participating in the IOTA program has grown from 163 banks to 170. What's really happening here is that a bunch of banks are ticked off that they are no longer making easy money off of IOTA accounts. So now they're trying to get Florida politicians to bail them out at the expense of working class people and families who can get steamrolled in court if they don't have someone from legal aid to represent them. This battle raises some important questions. What does it mean when justice depends on the generosity of banks? Should the profitability of a few corporations outweigh the needs of families who might lose their homes, veterans who depend on their benefits, and victims of abuse? This isn't just a banking issue, it's a human issue. Across the country, we see the same pattern. Big businesses using their power to influence policy in ways that don't always align with the public good. So where do we draw the line? As Florida's 2025 legislative session approaches, the future of legal aid funding in this state hangs in the balance. Banks are lobbying hard to roll back the rules and slash funding. But they're facing resistance from legal aid groups, activists, and maybe even from you. If you're watching this video, you have a voice. Whether you're in Florida or not, these issues matter. Share this video, talk about it with friends, and let your lawmakers know where you stand. Because justice shouldn't be a luxury, it should be a right. Thanks for watching. Let's keep the conversation going, because justice is everyone's fight.